Thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed some of those pictures. Hope they jogged some memories for you. My name is Meg Mulrooney. I'm very pleased to be your MC for tonight. I'm the Senior Associate Vice Provost in Academic Affairs. I'm also a professor of history here at JMU, and I have the honor of chairing the university's Campus History Committee. The Campus History Committee is charged by senior leadership to make sure that the way we tell this institution's history is accurate, inclusive, and relevant to the present day. We're very pleased to sponsor this event with CMIS tonight. We will hear from my colleague DeAndre Powell, the Associate Director of CMIS, a little bit later in the program. Like a lot of colleges and universities today, JMU tells a story that emphasizes some aspects of the past, but not others. I call JMU's version the Bobby Socks and Pearls story. Some of you have heard me say that before. It's very nostalgic. It's focused somewhere in the 1950s, and it especially highlights the white women who became teachers. That's not the whole story, not by a long shot. Since about 2015, many of us here at the university have been actively committing to tell the whole story of the institution. The Campus History Committee led the process that resulted in the Board of Visitors renaming 3 buildings on the quad, for example, for 5 Black people: Dr. Joanne Gavin, Dr. Alexander Gavin, Dr. Sherry Darkus Johnson, Mr. Walker Lee, and Ms. Doris Harper Allen. Our committee has also been reclaiming the story of Madison's first Asian American student, Yuri Nemoto, who came here in the 1940s during World War II. We're also documenting the story of the first Latina students who attended, a group of women from Puerto Rico who came in the 1930s. We've created a walking tour. There's a digital version, if you're interested, that ties all of these amazing histories together. And we're doing lots of other research as well. And we're especially looking for new ways to communicate these reclaimed histories, like this webinar tonight. As a reminder, if you saw the slide deck scrolling, tonight's program has 4 parts to it. We've broken it up into small chunks because a Zoom webinar like this can be challenging for all of us to navigate. We're going to go till about 8:20 or so by the time it's all said and done. As we're progressing through, you are very welcome to put comments in the Q&A function if you see at the bottom of your screen, or you can also start queuing up your questions for part 4 when we get there. We're going to entertain the questions towards the end of the evening. Before we get into our panel, I want to introduce 2 dynamic women who've been responsible in helping to plan tonight's event. The first one is Dr. Lisa Wynn Bryan. If she is able to show herself, there she is. There's her lovely face. Hello. Dr. Bryan is going to lead the second panel for us. She is a double Duke, class of 90 and 93 also. She was a featured soloist with the Contemporary Gospel Singers from 18, that's my bad, historian, 1986 to 1988. She was the director her senior year, and then she came back and she was an advisor when she was a graduate student here. She is a proud member, lifetime member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated, which she joined while she was a student. She's an amazing gospel recording artist, and she's currently faculty in the African American Studies program at VCU. And then I'd also like to recognize Moniette Martin, my good colleague. She is also a double Duke, classes of 93 and 96. She was also a member of CGS when she was here, and she also is a lifetime member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated. But Moniette returned to JMU in 2004 as an employee. She came here working under President Rose in one of his diversity initiatives, and she currently serves as the Senior Assistant Dean of Admissions with a lot of responsibility for a large part of Virginia. She's also a member of the Campus History Committee, and she and DeAndre Powell are going to have a section later on. So with some of those preliminaries, I want to turn now to the first set of panelists to talk about CGS and its history. So I'm going to ask for Stan Stewart to reveal himself, and also Troy Strong And of course, we have Byron Bullock with us. So quick introductions. Stan Stewart, for those of you who don't know him, he enrolled at what was Madison College in 1974. Yes, Madison College, big smile there. So he is a very early member of the CGS. He served as an early president as well in his senior year, 1977, 1978. And that was, I think, the year, or right about there in 77 is when Madison became JMU. Then, of course, we have Mr. Bullock, a man who needs no introduction, I'm sure, to many of you here tonight. He came here in 1985 as the Assistant Dean of Students and was given charge over what was a brand new office, the Center for Multicultural Student Services. And he really just transformed that entire operation, built out a lot of new programs, and oversaw a lot of our Black student organizations. So we're delighted to have him with us. He is currently the Dean of Students at American University of Nigeria and is coming to us from there. Thank you for joining us. And then last, Troy, are you there? Are you able to turn on your camera? Well, hopefully he can hear me and will be available when we get to him. But I want to say that Troy Strong enrolled at JMU in 1982. He was also, there he is, and was a member of the CGS and was a featured soloist and also was president. He served as president in his senior year, 1985 to 1986. Okay, so thank you all for bearing with me for the introductory. Mr. Stewart, I want to turn to you first, or Stan. You've given me permission to call you Stan. Thank you.
I'm retired. I don't need to be Mr. anymore.
Yes, lovely to meet you. So for folks who are not as familiar with the institution's history, Black enrollment starts here in 1966 when Sherry Darkus enrolls, along with another as yet unidentified Black woman. We're still trying to get her name. In 1968, the Supreme Court of the United States issued a landmark ruling. It's called Green versus New Kent County School Board of Virginia. So it was a Virginia case. And the Supreme Court declared that the freedom of choice plans that had allowed a very, very small handful of Black students to integrate predominantly white schools in Virginia, they declared that freedom of choice was unconstitutional. And so that year, we saw a pretty big increase in enrollment. In 1968, we had about 32 freshmen, Black freshmen enrolled for the first time, a significant number for this institution. And then the number started going up and up and up. But it's that small population, 1968, 69, 70, 72, that really starts creating the Black student organizations that are so central. So we had Black Student Alliance, 1969, Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, 1971, and then CGS. And CGS comes in very, very early, and you were here. You were here for it. Maybe not the first group, but soon after. And so really want you to start off tonight and tell us, you know, how did you come to join CGS, and what was it like in those early?
Well, it was 1974, so technically the second year. And Bernice was the director, founder and director. And it was just a totally different time with, there was probably less than 100 Black students and faculty on campus at that time of the 8,000 or so students. So it was a way for us to just be able to get together. I mean, there was so few of us, we knew each other's first and last names for the most part. If we got a big get together, we could all do it in somebody's suite in a dorm. That's how few of us there were. And it also provided us with an opportunity to continue our Christian walk, so to speak, because I don't know about anybody else, but my freshman year, I wasn't looking to join another church somewhere in the Harrisonburg area, but it provided us an opportunity to at least be able to do that. And it was just a great way to get to know people. So that's how we kind of met up. Other than meeting in Dining Hall 5, that was kind of how we got to see each other.
Dining Hall 5.
that was kind of our spot. If I think I have the number right, I think it was 5.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So who were some of the other members? You mentioned Vernice Darkis, the first director.
Vernice, Deborah. Well, Deborah T is what we called her. There's so many nicknames. Blob, whose real name was Bernard. Just Pat Scales. I mean, there's just a lot of people. We had branches from Northern Virginia. We had a big Lynchburg contingent, Central Virginia, the Richmond area. So there's people from all over, but most of us were Virginians, if my memory's right. Yeah.
And you didn't know people, as you said, that became a place where you met your fellow students and
Yes.
and had some of your social life.
And we kind of bonded. That way. Yeah.
Did you start traveling with the CGS?
Well, yes, but how can I best say this? We were Madison students, but we really didn't represent Madison College because they didn't recognize us as a group. So when we went out, we drove our own cars. There was no robes, no vans, no buses until probably maybe my junior or senior year. So we were students that just happened to go to JMU. We didn't go representing JMU as a recruiting tool, which later happened apparently. Because there was probably less than 20 of us, if I'm really trying to do the numbers. So we got in cars and went to different churches in Virginia. If somebody had a home church that was nearby, we'd go there. The one thing that we always knew we were going to get, though, was a good meal when we got to the church to after we'd sing or something, they would always feed us. So that was a great thing too. But we had a great time.
That's wonderful. Yeah, part of the story that we're trying to uncover is when the CGS started becoming more and more formalized as it grew, and when the touring started. You're going around to different churches in Virginia, but also other venues. We saw in the slide deck, by the early 90s, the group was competing internationally. So it's wonderful to have that. In the early days were very different.
Oh yeah, we thought we hit the lottery when we got a van one day. It was amazing.
And you didn't have robes.
No ropes, no. We just wore our Sunday best.
That's right.
Yeah, no ropes.
That's right. Well, let's turn to Byron Bullock now. So you come in a little bit after this period, right? JMU is now JMU. It's having a big growth phase, along with many other institutions in Virginia. My former colleague Daphne Thomas, she'd been hired, and then Forrest Parker, excuse me, had been hired. And did he come the same year as you? Oh, you're muted, sir.
He came just before I arrived.
So as a Black administrator coming in this growth phase and being charged with recreating, building, expanding, how would you describe what you were tasked with doing then?
Well, I think it's important to note that Virginia was still under court order to desegregate in 1985. And money became available through the State Council of Higher Education for Virginia for institutions to create programs and services to attract and retain students of color, particularly Black students. And we began a lot of initiatives when I came on board. I worked very closely. I first of all, I picked up the baton from Larry Rogers and Kelvin Harris, and was charged with developing at that time, the Office of Minority Affairs, which eventually we grew into the Center for Multicultural and International Student Services as it is today. We built out programs like the Transition Program, which was intended as a retention program for Black students in particular. Black Freshman Weekend became a staple on the campus, and obviously an opportunity to recruit. And recruitment and retention, again, were paramount at that particular time. We saw the expansion of organizations who were part of the Divine Nine, and the fraternities and sororities grew incredibly during that time period. We created the African American Male Academy, the African American Female Institute, and there were campus-wide initiatives to improve the quality of life for students of color at JMU, and that's what we were trying to create. Forrest Parker and Antonio Thomas, followed by Antonio Thomas, really did a tremendous job of recruiting the students, and we worked all collectively to make sure we retained them. And CGS was part of that experience that began to expand and create opportunities for our students to not just be involved in something that was culturally related, but to be involved in the mainstream of the campus community. We had to change the narrative. There needed to be a re-education on campus, for example, about how to engage students of color in the mainstream of the campus community. We had, when I arrived, I was told within 3 weeks of my arrival that I had to plan Black homecoming. And I very quickly asked the dean of students at that time, well, what exactly is Black homecoming? Do Black people not participate in the university-wide homecoming program? And he told me, no, it's a separate program. And at that particular point in time, a lot of those activities were off campus. They were not even held on the campus when Black students would return for homecoming. And so we had to change that narrative. We saw CGS participating in major programs. We wanted CGS to be participating in major programs like Parents Weekend and Homecoming, but that wasn't happening at the time. To give you an example, CGS had a concert for Parents Weekend, but they were never part of the overall schedule of activities for Parents Weekend. And I remember them performing at one point in time, and Ron Carrier, and you have to understand some things about Ron Carrier. Ron Carrier was president, and his philosophy was that all students should be happy at JMU because happy students equate to happy alumni who would continue to give back and come back to the university. And I assumed that he meant the same thing for all students, including students of color. And we held a Parents Weekend, and the CGS concert was going on at the same time that Dr. Carrier was scheduled to give the welcome to parents across the campus in another venue. And after that, he called me into his office and asked me why the CGS concert was happening at the same time that he was scheduled to give a welcome address. And I told him it was because the CGS concert was not part of the overall weekend schedule. He quickly said that had to change. It was then that I became a member of the campus-wide committee for homecoming and for Parents Weekend, so that we could resolve those conflicts. And so that's when CGS became part of the schedule for those major events that happened on campus. Never assumed that gospel music is only admired by Black people. Ron Carrier enjoyed gospel music, and that was one of his motivations for making certain that there was no conflict, because he said, I wanted to come to the concert, but I couldn't because I had to give this welcome address. Soon after that, I took advantage of his kindness and his words and approached him about purchasing the first 100 robes that we purchased for CGS, and then had to go back to him as the numbers began to grow to get him to provide resources so we could purchase another 50 to add to that. So the numbers really began to grow. And again, it was a recruitment push, but also a push to retain students, to make sure that students had an opportunity to be a part of the mainstream of the campus community, and feel like JMU was their institution and their home, their soon to be alma mater. And so that was the direction that we took, and we continue that. I mean, when you look at the recruitment numbers in 1992, 10% of the population at JMU had grown to, 10% of the population at JMU was African American students,
Right.
and 13% overall for students of color. And those numbers weren't seen at a lot of institutions around the state of Virginia anywhere.
Yep.
We were excited about what we were doing. The Black Freshman Weekend, as I mentioned before, not only was it spearheaded by Forrest Parker, but there were students who were actively engaged in developing out that particular program. Moniette Martin was one of them, Vanessa Evans, Stephanie Dillard, and a lot of these people are still, connected and engaged. I think what we see now is, because of the growth and development and the push to involve students in the mainstream of the campus community and make them happy in that environment, is a result. We're seeing the results of that in our alumni, particularly Black alumni who come back to JMU, and who want to be a part of homecoming, and they come back in large numbers. They're excited because of the experience that they had while they were students on the campus.
I think you just teed this up very nicely. I'd like to turn to Troy Strong now, because he was a student exactly in that period that you're describing, that early 80s, that growth phase. So Troy, can you tell us, how does that resonate with you? What led you to join CGS, and what were your experiences at that time as a student on campus?
Well, good evening. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. It was kind of weird for me because I was on the football team, and my senior year, I decided I was not going to play football. I wasn't going to the NFL. So there was, and I had been hearing the choir around campus for so long. And so I decided to join. And it was around the time that we had Farm Aid. If you all remember that big concert thing that we had, they were raising money all across the world for Farm Aid. We participated. CGS participated. We actually backed up a big time group. I think it was the Spinners. It was one of the big groups from Motown, and they came to Harrisonburg, and we backed them up. And after that, I'm like, I'm really, really into this choir. And so I joined the choir, and then before you know it, I became president. I was in graduate school at JMU at that time when I became president. And from there, my main goal with CGS was not only the spiritual aspect of it, but also I had been hearing for years and years and years that we did not have robes. And everybody wanted robes because, we wanted to be uniformed. Everybody had different colors. It was, you wore black, but it was different shades of black and all this and all that. And we say, if we get robes, then we will be very uniform. And so being my executive committee, Denise Morris, who's now Denise Morris, she married Warren. And we decided that we were going to have a fundraiser during the summer. So we sent everybody home during the summer, and we said, hey, go into your community and just ask for donations. And the amount of money that you raise from the donations would reduce the cost that you had to come up for your robe. And so before school let out, we had everybody get fitted for the robes, and people were like, oh yeah, right. We've heard this so many times before. But people went home, we raised money. We came back to school. We didn't have enough for the robes. We were trying to get them before homecoming. And so we set up a meeting with Dr. Carrier. And this is probably where Byron came in. I never knew this. And this is probably what happened. I went to meet with Dr. Carrier, and me and my committee, and we had this big speech we were going to give to Dr. Carrier on why we needed these robes and why the school should help us with the remaining balance. And we went in, and before we could say a word, he said, how much are the robes? And we told him out, and he said, okay, well, I'm going to write a check. You all get the robes. And we were like sitting there dumbfounded. We were like, wait a minute, we did all this work and then you could just give us a check. And we do that. We didn't have to go walk out there in the 100-degree weather trying to get people to donate. It was so funny. And then the money that we did raise, the great thing about it, the money that we did raise for the robes, the school paid for the robes, and Byron probably his hand was in it. We used that money for traveling. And that's when we really started traveling around Virginia up to Maryland, because we finally had money to get buses to take us to all the different places in Virginia. So it was it was a great time. It was a wonderful time.
That's wonderful. And how you found the time to do that in addition to your studies and playing football?
Well, that was the year that I stopped playing football, my senior year, and that's when I was president. So I didn't have to worry about football, worry about graduate school because it was real tough. But, I had a great executive committee and, we were so driven to spread the word, the gospel, spread it around Virginia. And so we were so focused on doing that and getting those robes. So from there, I didn't really worry about class or anything else because everything worked like clockwork. So
that's great. Great stories. I hope somebody who's listening, some of you have robes somewhere. We have pictures of them, but it'd be really cool to see the thing. I'm just gonna let that float out there. Lisa, I'm gonna hand it off to you now.
Thank you, Dr. Meg. I'm just laughing about those robes because Mr. Block would threaten us and follow through on the threat. If we did not turn those robes in at the end of the year, we would have a thing on our account. We tried to keep up with those robes. We did pretty good. I think a couple got away, but we did pretty good with that. So yes, a lot of stories. I want to move into the next decade, working with Mr. Bullock, into work with Dr. Carolyn Gordon. So I'm going to ask Dr. Carolyn Gordon if she will come on screen, if Anthony Lindsay Baker will come on screen, and if Darren Thomas will come on screen. These individuals that we're going to talk to now are now living the dream that has been set up from the early 80s to ensure that we now have this student organization, Contemporary Gospel Singers, and the other organizations are beginning to grow, and the population, as Mr. Bullock alluded to, began to grow. So we have an abundance at this time, if you will, we're talking like 1989 into the 90s of Black students on campus. And so these panelists, if you don't know, and some of them you do know, but I want to introduce Dr. Carolyn Gordon, who was the advisor to CGS during her time at JMU. She was there from 1989 to 1992. She was the first Black person to teach in the mass communications department. So again, breaking barriers, and it speaks to where we were at that time. She left JMU to work on her PhD at Howard University, and she taught at Bowie State, and she is an ordained minister. Now, all of these people coming up next are ordained ministers. So again, that speaks to their experience at JMU and beyond. And then she's done so many things. She went to the Department of Communications and Homiletics at the Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. Again, the first Black person, first woman to hold that position. And she's currently serving as chair of the Mass Communications Department at Mississippi Valley State University. She has 5 degrees. Okay, I'll just leave that there. Y'all just say la, sit with that. Okay, and then we have Lindsay Anthony Baker. He's a 1993 graduate of JMU. He has a bachelor's in computer and information systems. He's currently a branch chief for the Technical Solutions Center at Arlington County government. He is a licensed and ordained minister. His church is Chestnut Grove Baptist Church. So those of you who are there in the 90s may remember going to Esmont, Virginia, to his church to sing. And he is currently an associate minister and minister of music, and he's been there since 1996 in that position. He joined CGS in the fall of 1988. He was the assistant director to yours truly. And then when I graduated, he became the director from 90 to 91, and took the choir to 2 competitions. And you've heard about that, going to Atlanta, Georgia, and to Houston, Texas, to the Baptist Student Union Choir competition. That is Lindsay Baker. And last but certainly not least, Elder Darren Thomas. He was a musician for the fall of 91 to spring 92. He was the director from fall of 92 to spring of 94. He has a bachelor's in sociology from JMU, and he has a master's degree of divinity from the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University. And he's currently director of a nonprofit organization that bridges the gap between mental and spiritual health services for those in crisis. So everybody is talented, educated, all a part of JMU, which leads me to this question, the first question posed to all 3 of you. Can you speak to what did you feel, or what impacts or influences do you believe having an organization like CGS on campus, working with the choir, working with CMIS and other Black student organizations, how does that impact you and prepare you for your time and future, and what your future might be being at JMU and even after JMU? So I'm going to start with the junior person, Elder Darren Thomas, if you would just speak to that and your experience with CGS at JMU.
Well, it is no doubt CGS is what drew me to JMU. It was a fall, I don't know if that's Black, it's not Black Freshman Weekend, but it's that fall encounter. They were singing Jesus is Real, and Stefan Green broke out with the and I stood
little
up
go-go beat in there
with the go-go beat, and I said, I want to be college educated. That was it. I was done. And it's funny, Crystal and I tell my kids, we literally made an HBCU at a PWI. And for me, it was like family. And CGS, or the gospel choir, was our connection back to our roots at home. So like being at school, it made the campus like family oriented. And it made Tuesday nights like church. And my favorite times of CGS, what I miss the most, you guys, is the prayer circle at the end of the night, because that's where you saw real vulnerability. That's where you saw transparency. Everybody throws that word anointing around, but to me, the anointing is authenticity. And you would see people at their most vulnerable, authentic moments and have their prayer requests turn into a praise report by the next week. Like, we learned about God for ourselves at such an impressionable age, you know, where everybody was so ambitious trying to become. We were practicing just submitting to who he said we were. And so that made a lasting impression upon my life. Like, it hasn't changed since then. Like, that was the pivot point. And it was the responsibility of CGS. We were given a lot of responsibility, you guys, to go around the country and represent a university. But I think we carried it well, and we worshiped God. We weren't just a performance choir, not at all. We were a worshiping choir and a family. And so, yeah, it meant the world to me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely family. How about you, Lindsay? What were your thoughts about?
Yeah, all of my thunder. No, I'm just gonna. I was always a church boy. I grew up a church boy. In fact, I remember meeting Lisa and her mother and her sister and all of those people at a gospel fest when I was in, I guess, the 11th grade. And I remember going to JMU, being invited to Black Freshman Weekend, and saw the choir. And I was just so amazed. They ended their last selection, and they went back like this. And then Lisa Wynn was at in the center, and she sang some high note. And that's why I said, okay, wait a minute. This is where I need to be.
I'm trying not to laugh.
Go and you get your education, and you find you a church somewhere, because it wasn't no going to college and having fun and drinking and all that. Well, you know, we did some of that, but you know,
Oh yeah.
having fun and doing all that, go to church. So we connected with First Baptist Church. Y'all know Reverend Calvin Baltimore.
Yeah.
Well,
The hacking preacher and whatnot, but we love Reverend Calvin Baltimore, and he allowed us the opportunity to sing in his church. I think it's every third Sunday or something of that nature.
Mhm.
And got to know the folks in the community. So I felt very at home. Just like Darren said, it was a family atmosphere. And I can't go another step without mentioning. So the real reason why I became sort of versed in gospel music was there were two twins in the choir, Christy and Carla Ricks. And I had befriended them freshman year. And I would go to their room to see their parents bought them all of the gospel music, the up-to-date gospel music. And, you know, I only knew James Cleveland and some of those other ones, but they introduced me to a lot until they got tired of me coming over all the time. But certainly it was just like a family. I'm really close to those two today. And the fraternity that I joined, almost everybody in the fraternity was a member of the choir. And then you looked at the choir, and there were so many other Black Greek letter organizations in the choir. It was just a huge family. And so when you see them on the streets, you know that, you know, this is my church family, this is my JMU family. And I can't go without saying, you know, giving homage to Mr. Bullock, who allowed us to come to transition. I'll say allowed us to come to transition, because
absolutely.
at first, I was just accepted to the university. I had my grandmother call and say, "Hey, can he come to transition? Because I want to go to college early." And I got an opportunity to meet a lot of phenomenal and amazing people. I mean, I can't even. Pat Southall. I mean, there's so many great people who came through JMU that I know personally. Who are professional, who are phenomenal, who are Lisa Wynn. Oh my God, just a lot of great people. And so I call them family. Lisa comes to my house for my yearly party, and well, that's a little too much, but and I'm looking at everybody today, like that back into the 80s, and it seems like we're in the same place. So,
but you know what, Lindsay, you pointed out, and Darren did it also, that, you know, things that we did at home, we went to church at home. So we found that in Harrisonburg, we had family at home, we had connections at home. We brought those things with us. And I think, you know, and we'll talk about where we are now, but I think that whole landscape has completely changed, and is very different than it was for us in the 80s and 90s. Dr. Gordon, you had the pleasure of advising us.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
What was your perspective of trying to keep us in line, or even as a young professional, you know, being at JMU, being the first Black woman, first Black person in the communications department to serve on the faculty? Can you share your thoughts of how you felt during that time?
Absolutely can. In fact, Lindsay, I had flashbacks when I had to take some libations away from you all when we were in Houston.
Right.
The only thing I regret was that I did not pour those bottles out in that room in the toilet. And then somebody accused us of taking the bottles and partying. Dr. Angela Roberts was with us, and Julia Moore of the recreation. So, but you know, it's interesting because I had no idea all this was going on because I had my own journey. By the time when I came to James Madison, I had just finished seminary graduate school. As an ordained minister in the Baptist church, women just really had very little places of acceptance at that point. And I was just blessed that I did a dual religion and communication. So how I got to James Madison, a friend challenged me when I was graduating, what are you going to do? I don't know. He said, send out 50 resumes. Just send them out and see what happens. Well, it got to the point that I was down at number 48 and couldn't find any places to send resumes. And James Madison had an advertisement for a chair of the department. So I said, oh, James Madison, I can't be the chair, but I can get these last resumes out. Anyway, I got a call from George Weed. And he asked me, was I still interested? He don't even know how the position came available, But if he had gotten my resume the week before, he would have told me we had no positions. Right? Now, I knew nothing about James Madison. I thought it was Jim Jones University. I didn't know where I was coming to. I was in Texas from Kansas City. I had never been this far south besides Mississippi, and did not know if I can preach what God had planned, because I was lost. I mean, look, I rented furniture when I first got to Virginia. I had nothing. And then so in the department, of course, the only one that looked like me. And then I don't know who, I can't remember if it was you, Lisa, or someone came and asked me to be the advisor. And it just felt right. And that was such a gift to me, because it helped me make sense even of my calling in the midst of not being at a church. And so CGS became my family. You all, as students, Byron Bullock became family. The Black faculty became family. And it was a place where I could grow. It's interesting, though, because the first time I went to church at First Baptist, and I got read the Riot Act. I could come, I could do the missionary message, I could teach Sunday school, but I couldn't do nothing else before I had even asked. Okay. So CGS is the only reason I ended up back at that church for anything. Okay, I would go to support you all. And then all of a sudden, you all, okay, I don't know who's on here. I'm just gonna be real. So I think the pastor started talking back to me because he wanted to get next to you all, and he knew I was the advisor. Okay, so CGS got me in places that I was not appreciated being there.
Goodness,
but it was a joy. Yeah. And so you all, the thing about CGS that people don't know is the fact that they were phenomenal singers, but not only were they family, they were called, I would say, called to do ministry and grown folk stuff. I can never forget about Leanne Whitlock.
Yes.
And when the tragedy happened to her, in fact, I advised 3 organizations. Leanne was a part of every single one of them.
Wow.
The thing about it, though, the choir had to sing 3 times at a memorial service. Then they literally went down to, I can't remember where you all went to sing at the funeral, and then held the entire service on campus. Right, grown-up stuff. And the choir stuck together. They managed, and by that last day, I can't remember who sang the songs, Don't Cry for Me, and everybody started crying. But it was such a healing time. Byron, you mentioned Dr. Carrier. He would literally walk across campus and sit during choir rehearsal. That's how I got to know him. So I had no idea faculty didn't know him, that the faculty didn't hang out, because we sat and talked every rehearsal. And we had a situation where when the choir was getting ready to go to Houston, he had promised to help. And what you all don't know is that he had carried a check around looking for me for about 3 days. And lo and behold, I think my colleagues were surprised, because basically I got asked, well, how do you know him? And, the holy part of me wants to say Jesus, but, you don't do that.
This is amazing. Just these reflections are just, I'm getting these. I mean, this is literally 30, in some cases, 35 years ago that these things were happening. And, those of you who are listening, those of you who are part, if you have any questions, because we're going to move to a question and answer period. I just want to ask one last question of the 3 of you as we are prepared to pass the baton to Monette Martin. How has that impacted you today? What happened 30 years ago? How do you see that influencing where you are today? And I'll start with you again, Darren.
Okay, well, after being completely intimidated by Lindsay, who could do the entire Walt Whitman album and all of the Lord's Prayer and all that, y'all, I came in to CGS, that's the transition. Thank you, Byron Bullock. God bless your life. My mother sends her best. I came into transition and just volunteered to play keyboards in the background.
Wow.
Roger was supposed to come back to be the musician, but he did not come back. Kim Taylor put me in the music room with a grand piano and a tape recorder and 16 songs and say, rehearsal is Tuesday. And all of a sudden I was thrust into, so yeah, all of it was overwhelming to me, but necessary. Because what it did, it introduced me to ministry. No one could help me. None of the relationships, no one could help me. And on Tuesday, when y'all were literally looking down upon me, and no one knew I really couldn't play like all of that, I had to grow into that. But not just the playing part, but just leadership in general. And then Kirk Franklin came out with the reason why we sing. And, you know, I was all about Bible study, like, okay, why are we singing what we, well, that was my introduction to ministry and really caring for the least of the brethren and dealing with people that people don't want to deal with. It was an introduction to what I currently do now, which is create a safe space for people to marry mental health and spiritual health together.
Wow.
So that your pastor and your therapist complement each other instead of competing against each other. It's holistic care, but it's really for the least of the brethren. It's for people who don't have an emergency contact to report, you know, but that sense of connection, that sense of authenticity, I got on Tuesday nights, not running up and down the road, y'all. That was fun too. But that sense of community, that's what I learned through CGS and through knowing people. And I want to say this too. Lindsay said it was all types of organization that came through the door, but on Tuesdays, y'all, it was the biggest unity offering because everybody left their title at the door. We were all on first name basis, and we just wanted him to know our name.
Yeah.
We were there representing our families back at home, and through the prayer, we were partnering, believing God for your mama who had cancer. Or remember the time when somebody said, I'm not coming back next semester.
Yeah.
It made you appreciate the things that you were taking for granted. And so for me, immature me, it was the first introduction to a sense of awareness as to who I was in society.
Yeah.
Microcosm at JMU, but now into general society, who am I in relation to everybody else? I learned that at JMU when we voluntarily sacrificed ourselves to serve. Mama and daddy won't making us come, y'all.
Right.
We wanted to be. Come and go with me. We wanted to be in the presence. And that was important to me to establish a foundational identity at that age as a Christian.
I
and
love
really
that those foundational things were laid at that time. What about you, Lindsay?
And the church said amen. Bro, I told you all that I was always a church boy. So one of the things that came out of my commitment to CGS is my grandmother passed away my senior year in college. So right before she passed away, she said to me, she wanted me to make her a promise that I would always support her home church. Now, the church that I grew up in was not her home church, to support her home church, because she would take us to her home church on our off Sundays and whatnot. And I made her a promise that I'd do that. And so for the last 30 years, I have traveled 3 hours one way to this little church in the country to minister, to grow the music ministry, to help grow the church ministry, and while also serving in the capacity of member at Greater Mount Calvary Holy Church here in DC as well. So it really, CGS was really, really a strong point for me in college, and it helped to shape and mold me to what I am today. I'm still traveling. I'm in my mid-50s and I'm trying to get out of it. But I can't seem to get away from it.
Yeah.
I'm leaving on Thursday to go 3 hours one way. But I enjoyed
it, though. I love that commitment though. I love that. You'll know when. Dr. Gordon, can you close our segment out with some thoughts about now?
Yeah, I can. You know what? If I give you all any word, trust the process. I had no idea the doors and the gift of James Madison. When I went to DC to work on my PhD and started looking for a job, I got called by a pastor of a church who literally said, I have picked up your resume from someone else for their church, but I think you might be good for me. We started talking. He said, so you're at James Madison? I said, yeah. He said, I have a nephew there. He said, you know Byron Bullock? I said, are you Uncle Claude? So Mom had talked about Claude Swanson for so long. And, just what James Madison's done, the connection. So I ended up at Chapel Oaks Community Church, Craig Memorial Community Church in Chapel Oaks, Maryland, working under Byron's father for years. And Byron's family has become my family. Just a gift. And it's amazing. Working with the students and working with CGS also broke me into working with students. I heard all kind of confessions. I've heard all kind of tears, worked with them, ended up, while I was working on my PhD, while I was working at the church, I also took a position, Lindsay, with the DC Baptist Convention, which put me on the campus of Howard University as Baptist chaplain. And so all the traveling we did with CGS, all that translated. Teaching at James Madison also opened doors. In fact, I realized now, after I left California, I literally was absolutely burned out. And it was just a gift to end up in Mississippi, where I never wanted to be my entire whole life. The mosquitoes alone were enough to just go on to glory. And I ended up at Mississippi Valley State University, working with, especially after everything that happened before the pandemic with Garner, with Trayvon Martin. I wanted to go back and work with Black students. And working at Mississippi Valley State has come full circle. In fact, I talk about James Madison University students because you all have gone on and done magnificent things. And teaching at James Madison actually prepared me. I realize now I'm acting chair of our department. And because of starting at James Madison, I realize I can teach every single course in our entire communication curriculum. And that's because of the opportunities that were afforded, both on the spiritual side and the academic side. So it was tremendous. It was tremendous. I've worked at both PWIs and HBCUs, each service purpose, each benefits. I tell you, it is the students themselves are like crutches getting through life and making it work because we've been there. I've had Derek Green has his PhD. He came after me, but at one point he was hanging out at my place. Kim Taylor, who got her master's, was sleeping on my couch. Teresa Alexander, I don't know if you all remember her. She just got her PhD, and now she is she's the chair of the film at Prairie View A&M. So we have had students come a long way, and you all have just been phenomenal.
It has all been divinely ordered, all of it. It absolutely has. I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn it over to Monette. I know you all hang in there, those of you who are participating. We have one more segment, and then we're going to try and answer some questions or any comments that you might have. Please put it in the chat. And so I turn it over to Monette Martin. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lisa. And I must say, when Dr. Gordon speaks of divine, this is a divine day, and the fact that we are here gathered in this space on what would be normally a rehearsal day for CGS. And so I don't think when we're planning this, we're even thinking that. So I have the pleasure of being able to share, or have DeAndre share with us sort of where we are right now. For those of you that are here, may or may not know that I've actually been serving in a very unique capacity for the university over the last 20 years, in that I remotely work and recruit in my regions that were identified as highly populated with students of color. And so with that, over the last decade, as was mentioned and shared probably about a month ago now in the town hall, as to where we sit with regards to student population. And so I'd be remiss if I did not share that from that town hall, there was a lot of good information shared and data, in that we are definitely growing. I'm sure many of you have seen on the news recently in the last week or so, we have crossed the 40,000 application received, which is the highest number of applications ever received in the history of the university. The final number as of today is 40,622 apps for this class that we are looking to fill, of close to about 5,000 students. Over the last decade, we have increased not only our Black applications received, but we've also admitted a large number of those students. So the number of applications and admitted Black students has increased. Where we are sort of staying in the same zone or landing is that we are yielding about 200 of those students each year. So that information was shared and can be found on the town hall that is on YouTube, because that event was also recorded. And I will now pass it on to DeAndre, who can speak to some of the services, support services, and things that are in existence now and that are there for the current student population.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to take the time just to shout out all of the wonderful alum on this panel. Shout out to everyone who has done just work with CGS, and not only just in the name of CGS, but setting the framework for students to come after you, to have a great experience at JMU. And even though that's transitioned over the time and over the years, the same spirit that existed where students are drawn to the institution still exists today. And so I want to give you all your flowers, so where you all can see them, and thank you for the work that you all have done prior to even my arrival at James Madison University. So my name is DeAndre Powell. I work over in the Center for Multicultural Student Services, which is known as CMUS on campus. And within this role, I serve as an associate director. I get an opportunity to work with a lot of our student organizations. So we heard tonight just about how CGS was one of our first couple of organizations chartered on campus as far as our underrepresented communities, or for our Black community in general. Currently in CMUS, we have a total of 46 organizations which sit under our department. Within that, we have at least 15 to 20 of those organizations are organizations that are affiliated with the Black community. And within that, we have, of course, all of our Divine Nine organizations. Currently, CGS is not active on campus. During the pandemic, CGS ended up kind of dying out. And since then, we've been trying to work with students to bring CGS back and work on bringing different organizations back inside of our department. However, I think there's kind of been a little bit of a shift in culture on campus related to religious services and affiliations on campus. So there are a lot of different affiliated campus ministries on campus where a lot of students are affiliated with. And right now we've noticed that a lot of our students have a lot of time commitment, or commitments where their time is not as available. And a lot of our student organizations are a lot of our students are spreading their time out to be a part of various organizations. So we're hoping that in the future, as we continue to have events and programs such as this, and creating opportunities for our students to learn about the different history that exists at JMU and the richness of the Black community that's come through JMU, that we can get an opportunity to revive CGS and have it come back and be as great as it was prior, or even take it to other heights. So that's kind of where we are now. Within our department, we provide definitely a safe space for all of our students to come in our underrepresented communities. Something, if you all get a chance to come back to JMU anytime soon for homecoming, we've kind of started some type of tailgate thing at homecoming on that Saturday of the game, where we try to get an opportunity to bring a lot of our alumni together. And a lot of times our Black alumni come together, and it's a great opportunity for community. But we definitely want to invite you to come by and check out our department, which is located in the Student Success Center. And in that space, we have our Black Student Lounge, which is a great opportunity for space for our students to come together and have that safe space where you can kind of, what I call, speak that secret language, that secret Black language, or have a secret Black meeting essentially with your peers, and just have a safe space to be. So that's kind of what's happening in the CMUS today. I want to give honor and flowers to my director, Valerie Gann, who couldn't be with us this evening, but she sends her love and she sends her grace, or her thanks as well, for the work that you all have done in the past also.
Thank you all. Thank you. This has been very I just feel like I'm just going down memory lane. And I know I've looked in the chat, I know we have some younger alum participating and just making comments about the years of Dr. Carrier, the years of Dr. Rose, the support from the administration of a lot of the things that we wanted to achieve through travel and robes and just any number of things. I remember Dr. Carrier calling my mother to make sure that I could get what I needed to get out of the residence hall. And if those of you who knew my mother knew that she didn't take much off of people. And so I could not, the RA wouldn't let me get my stuff, and Dr. Carrier was right there, called my mother, don't worry about it. We'll have campus police over there and to meet you in storage. So we had support, we had reinforcements, and as we said, it's a different time now, different trends, a different student population. There were a couple of questions about reunion activities. And just so that you all know who are participating, we have been discussing, we have missed if you can help me with this, Dr. Meg, the 50th year or the 50th anniversary year for CGS by a couple of years, I think. So we've got pandemic and some other things happening. But just to kind of demonstrate how things are different, how things have developed differently. My niece went to JMU. She was the choir president. This would have been around 2018, 2017. And during that time, we said, oh, it's our 50th. We want to have a reunion. And she was kind of like, and I shouldn't just say her, but the organization, which went through a name change. So we knew it as CGS. They are now, or the organization, the last organization was changed to CGC, to choir versus singers. But they said, okay, you can go ahead and have the reunion. So that just goes to show you, like, that's your thing. You alumni can go have that. We're doing something a little different in 2018. So even as of, what is that? Just a few years ago, 6 years ago, things have changed and are very different from what we know in our minds of the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. So just a different climate. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I'm just kind of scrolling. A lot of love and a lot of comments in our Q&A. Just taking a glimpse.
And the pictures be posted somewhere. I missed some of them.
Yes. Dr. Meg, can you speak to that? Because we do want to collect any photography or artifacts or anything. Maybe there's a robe.
Yeah, we've been, yes, and maybe there's a robe. We've been talking, some of us behind the scenes. I mean, really, we've been sort of planning this webinar for about a year now, and that came up even tonight. A lot of photographs coming in. So if you have photographs to send, things that you are able to digitize and want to send them to me, or we have the campus history at jmu.edu. We're talking about maybe creating a collection as part of special collections. Yeah. A lot of our Black student organizations do already have deposits there to collect early materials. And we're also interested, and we're starting very, very slowly to do some oral history interviewing with our oldest Black alumni, particularly starting with that first generation. So in the short term, we are recording this event, and we're looking for a way that we might be able to share it on a website, at least temporarily, so you can come back and look at some of the pictures that we have. We will certainly, we will have everybody's emails. Thank you for RSVPing. And one of the things we might be able to do is then communicate back to you a place where you could find some of that information. I did see there was another person, was it Steve Calloway from the 70s was in the chat, and he was posting in there. I think it was a comment. He said that he sang with you, Stan, and was remembering
yes, he did,
strict practices that you had under Director Darkus.
Oh yeah, Yes, we did.
Is there any way to show any of the pictures of the other folks who are attending, or no?
They're in a different part of the webinar.
Dr. Meg, I do see this one question. I think we've kind of answered it. Allison Baker is asking, when was the last homecoming concert? So we used to have CGS concert as a part of homecoming. And homecoming, that whole weekend just became so saturated with activity. You know, you run into a game, run into a step show. I mean, it's just so much happening. And so the question is, you know, why did they stop? And even before COVID, there was no concert. And I'm just wondering if there was like not a choir then. 2018, I think, was the last that I remember. I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. That would be a good question to ask. It's sort of like on, again, on the front end, to your point, Lisa, we talked before, some people point to like 69 or something around that as the starting point for CGS. And there's a Breeze article that places it a little bit after that, you know, at least sort of 73, that 73, 74 school year. And the first performance was in April of 74. So by my count, you're in your anniversary year.
Okay.
Is how I would think about it. You know, part of the challenge of doing these things is that like when you look at the yearbooks, like for, you know, 86, the yearbook is actually covering 85, 86. Okay. Right. So you always have that little off
little lag in there between.
Yeah, right, because it's not mapped to the calendar year when we're talking about academic events. But I think you all are well positioned to be in your anniversary year, which is why it's great to have this event.
So those of you who are participating, you know, if that's something you're interested in, we can look to do that and plan a reunion concert activity. I know we've talked about it, and a lot has happened in the past 4 years. So, you know, we can revisit that. There's also a question from my college roommate, Roz Ashford. Were students invited to this webinar? Were currently enrolled students invited to this webinar?
Yep, I can definitely speak to that. So we actually have a couple of students on the call or on the Zoom right now. So students were invited, as well as this information was sent out to all of our student organizations as well.
Okay, wonderful. Well, you know, again, there's this spirit of alumni wanting to reach back based upon our experience, our lived experience while at JMU, and we want everyone to feel that same Duke pride. And so I think, you know, sometimes those generation gaps, I mean, our children are now in college, you know, and so things are just, it's so wild. It's so amazing what God does. It's very fascinating how things come full circle. And so, you know, however we can bring those groups together, alumni and currently enrolled students, we want to be able to do that. So I'm going to turn it back.
I just want to chime in. Someone had asked Anthony Bowman. Actually, he was in CGS from 2007 to 2012. So we can go back, you know, at least date it to 2012 that they were still in. Then I think you said Kiki was 2016, correct?
That's why we often, you know, we rely on people, your collective memory. You have a lot of the information that we just don't have here. If people don't donate materials or create ways to share this history, we don't have it. So I'm delighted to hear some of this, and we're saving all the stuff in the chat too.
Good, that's good.
So we can read that together.
Would you mind telling your story about the bracelet that was in the video? Hopefully we'll at the end we'll run it again, but I don't know if you have your bracelet.
Oh, there it is.
Story.
Yeah. And it was given to me, I guess, I don't know if it was we probably had some end of the year festivity of sorts, and it was just presented to me. It may have been the last rehearsal. I can't really remember. It was a great thing. And that's the bond that you've been talking about, even when there was only 20 versus 120, you know, that same bond was there then, even in the 70s. In fact, one of my most touching moments is I always come down for homecoming, and the CSG concert will be one of the things I'd always do. And one day I was there, and it was probably, I guess, late 80s, early 90s. I looked up in that choir, and there were more people in the choir than we had Black students on campus when I was there. And it just made me cry. I mean, it was like, wow, look at that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, we started this, but yeah, look at that now. So
You know what's amazing too, Stan?
Thank you,
Today
Stan.
in class, I told my students, somebody's got to go first. Somebody's got to open the door. And, you know, we appreciate you. As DeAndre has said, we appreciate you and give homage to you for, you know, you guys just coming together. You know, I knew Bernice Darkis, you know, when I was in high school, and my mother was a singer. And so she used to, she was very active, her whole family in the church.
oh yeah, they all had some music thing going.
So I didn't even know who she was, you know, until I got to JMU, and I was like, I grew up with her. Like how that, you know, she was at JMU, and then I would come to JMU. So we appreciate you and Vernice and the Darkest family for opening those doors for us to come behind you. Yeah.
And I'm still singing. So
yeah, that's great. I'm in retirement right now. Mr. Bullock, could you just close us out with, I don't know, some comment or something? I just really feel like, you know, and I appreciate the shout outs and remembrances that you gave regarding Antonio Thomas and Forrest Parker. We lost a lot of students. Dr. Gordon talked about Leanne Whitlock, Valerie Miller, Pam Anthony. And if I start calling names, I know I'm going to forget somebody, but could you just kind of close us out? And then Dr. Meg, if you'll close us out after that. But I'd like to turn it over to you to just have a final comment.
Well, I think that CGS created a phenomenal experience, spiritual experience for so many students who participated over the years, and not just students, but staff and faculty as well. What I got from my experience and interaction with CGS has changed my life in many different ways. It got me through my master's degree from JMU in 1989. It got me through a lot of days of struggle and battles and fights to make certain that we had on that campus the kind of experiences that again have created what we see today, and those alumni who are still connected and coming back and giving back to the university in many ways. And it was, you know, if you ever want to have a great experience, take a road trip with Darren and Lisa, you know, to go see, where we went to see BB and CC Winans in the rain in Richmond, and it was just a phenomenal experience. And again, it's that family that they created for all of us who participated and who were there, whether we were in CGS or in some way connected to it.
You made me think about John P. Key too. That wasn't such a good.
Let's not go there today. Let's not go there today.
Right.
What time did he show up?
Oh, I was late.
4 hours late. Phenomenal talent though. So this is recorded. He is a phenomenal talent.
Hey, but Stan, I gotta appreciate you, buddy. I've never met you. I didn't know what I was walking into, but we stand on your shoulders, and I want to thank you. But I gotta say, by the time I came along, we had 2 wonderful Prevost buses, and when we showed up in town, we was looking like we came from the James Madison University, and I ain't never held my head down. That was a wonderful ride. So thank you. But by the time it got to me, bruh, it was looking kind of good.
It was okay.
Well, here at the end, I know a number of people were talking about, you know, the actual music and where's the music? And so we do have a little bit of video of a performance from the past that Lex is going to cue up for us to sort of usher us out into our evening. Many, many thanks to everyone. And I hope you enjoy the contemporary gospel singers.
Please help me welcome the members of the Contemporary Gospel Singers as they come forth to perform a musical expression.